What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. In this episode of The Creator's Moment, providing you a daily dose of motivation and inspiration as you consciously create your world. Today's principle is simple. Where God leads, He provides. There are many times in our lives where we feel as though we don't know what's happening, we don't know where we're going, we don't really know what's going on. We can feel led to make certain choices, but we're afraid to make those choices just simply because we don't know how provision is going to come. As I was thinking about this, my mind went back to the story of Abraham and even the children of Israel as they were traveling through the wilderness to the promised land, right? God had promised Abraham a son. And when that son was born, several years later, God had told Abraham, sacrifice your son. Yes, the son of promise. Yes, your only son. And so Abraham, trusting God, took Isaac up this mountain to be sacrificed. And as they're traveling along the way, Isaac said to his dad, he was like, hey, I see the wood, I see the fire, but where's the sacrifice? Abraham looked at Isaac and said, God is going to provide for himself a lamb. And it's interesting because when they got to the top of the mountain, he sets up the altar, he ties Isaac up and lays him down, and he's getting ready to kill him and sacrifice as God had commanded. And as he was about to strike him, the Lord said, stop. And Abraham looked over and there was a ram caught in the bush. God had led him there. Abraham trusting, like the book of Hebrews tells us, that Abraham had trusted God to the point that he knew that he could bring Isaac back from the dead, if need be, because Isaac was that son of promise. But instead, God provided for him in a whole different way. Similarly, the children of Israel, as they were traveling through the wilderness, right, out of Egypt on the way to the promised land, they were hungry, they were thirsty, and God provided manna daily for them, right? Bread from heaven, God gave them. God gave them water out of a rock. And God is still providing for us today in so many different ways, in ways that we can't necessarily see, in ways that we can't necessarily understand. We might be called to take a job in this different city or in a completely different state, but we're afraid to apply to this company that we want to work for just simply because we don't know where we're going to live. We don't know where we're going to stay. We don't know how we're going to even pay for the move. We might feel called to start a certain project, but because we don't see how we're going to get the funding, because we don't see how we're going to build the support for it, we don't take that step. Very rarely do we see the entire path forward before we even take the first step. God isn't calling us in this moment to know the entire path. He's not calling us to know the whole way. What we're called to is faithfulness. What we're called to is trust. We're called to know and believe that the Spirit of God operating on the inside of us is going to give us the directions and the instruction, and the provision is going to show up. All we're called to do is have faith. All we're called to do as creators is to trust that God is still working behind the scenes. There's this idea out of this book I love called U Squared by Price Pritchett. And in one of the sections, he titles it Trusting Your Unseen Forces, right? And this idea that there are powers, that there are forces beyond our senses that are working for us. I don't know where you sit, but the way I understand that is God is constantly moving for us. God is doing what we can't. The Spirit is moving and leading us and setting up serendipitous occurrences, right? Those coincidences, those, what do they call them? Not serendipity, but the synchronous, right? The synchronicities. God is behind all. I call synchronicities God winks. It's those moments that happen that the only way you can't explain it is through something divine. And yeah, it might seem small, but it's those moments where you're having a conversation with someone and then somebody else completely unrelated presents you information related to what you were just talking about. It's thinking to yourself, hey, I would love to do X, Y, or Z. And then somebody who doesn't know what you were thinking presents you with a path forward. Or you're thinking to yourself, hey, I need money for this, that, or the third. and seemingly out of the blue, a forgotten check appears. God is always working. As creators, we're not the reason for everything happening. Yeah, we can get the ball rolling. We can start the momentum moving in a particular direction. But it's going to take trust and faith, believing that it's going to take something bigger than us to make it happen. And so my encouragement for you today, for this week, is to simply trust and to know that where God leads, he provides.